Thank you for joining us today. This is the Des Moines National Weather Service Spotter Training for 2016. This training will be broken down into two parts, the first of which will be included in this video. Part 1 will include an introduction, a look at being a storm spotter and how to participate, spotter safety, 2015 Iowa Weather in Review, and Iowa Severe Weather Climatology. Part 2, included in a separate video, will take a look at thunderstorm fundamentals, a detailed look at updrafts and downdrafts, a look at tornadoes in depth, and a quiz at the end to test your knowledge. The National Weather Service is a part of the federal government, and its parent agencies are the Department of Commerce and NOAA, or the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. We serve the United States and its territories, and there are 5 offices that serve the state of Iowa, including Sioux Falls, Omaha, La Crosse, and Davenport. The biggest of which is the office here in Des Moines, which has the 51 counties noted in green. Our primary mission is the protection of life and property, and as a spotter, you can certainly help us accomplish this mission. Spotter reports are used in real time to help meteorologists issue warnings. They look at radar data, the environment, or whether the atmosphere is capable of producing severe weather on any particular day, and spotter reports. Your spotter reports are sent to the world, including the electronic media, television stations, radio stations, NOAA Weather Radio, and the Internet. Spotter reports are important because radar has many limitations. It can only see so close to the ground and often many thousands of feet above the ground. As a meteorologist, we need to know what's occurring at the surface, and your reports are critical in understanding exactly what's happening. Spotter reports are immediately released to the world and increase the response to any particular warning. If we say the National Weather Service has issued a radar-based tornado warning, people will certainly respond, but they'll respond in much greater detail and urgency if we include a detailed report of where a tornado is occurring, where it has been spotted, how it's moving, and what damage has occurred. So we definitely need your help to save lives and protect property. The National Weather Service Spotter Network has over 4,500 spotters. These spotters often report directly to the National Weather Service with their severe weather reports. And as you can see in the map, there are some weaknesses in the rural areas, and spotters are needed in particular in those locations. If you are interested in joining, please visit midiowaskywarn.org, and there's a form on the front page there where you can enter your information. We're not asking you to be a chaser or do anything out of the ordinary. Just basically have a contact in place where if we call you, we know your location, and if you call us, we've assigned you a spotter number and we know exactly where you're reporting from. There are other types of spotters as well, including local police and fire departments, amateur radio operators with volunteers coming into the office to staff amateur radio nets with the call sign K0DMX, and there are also professional storm chasers and hobbyists that go out on their own and try to capture video and photos of severe weather. Other spotters help the National Weather Service that record daily precipitation, snowfall and rainfall amounts, and those are called CoCoRaHS observers. For more information on the CoCoRaHS program, including how to report rain and snowfall, please visit www.cocorahs.org. Spotters can report to the National Weather Service in many ways, including traditional voice phone messages. That number's been around for a long time and is 800-SKYWARN or 759-9276. This is available to all spotters, and it is an easy and quick and easy way to reach us. We can also take reports via amateur radio with the amateur operator here at the call sign K0DMX. We can also be reached via social media on Twitter and Facebook. We now accept text messages, emails, and there is also an online reporting form. For Facebook, you're encouraged to report photos and videos directly onto our page, but also be sure to include the time and location of where it occurred. We do get reports and videos of hail on a back deck, for instance, but it's difficult to tell how exactly large the hail is in detail. We can't tell if it's dimes, peas or something of that nature. So be sure to tell us explicitly how big the hail is. You can also report via Twitter in a similar matter, sending us text and pictures or video. Be sure to include the hashtag NWSDMX or IAWX for Iowa weather. Another new way to report is Periscope. That's similar to Twitter, but also sends live video of what you're doing. And again, when you edit your broadcast title, be sure to include the hashtags NWSDMX or IAWX so staff here at the office are alerted to your broadcast. And regardless of whether you're a spotter or not, we encourage everyone to like and follow us on Facebook and Twitter. For text messaging and email, those are great ways to send photos and video. For text messaging, and this is for SMS text messaging only, not voice communications, you can text us at 515-240-5515. For email, we can be reached at dmx.spotterreport@noaa.gov. Another great way to send pictures and video. But remember, regardless of the way that you're sending your information, be sure to include the time and the date and the location of your report, which is with as much detail as possible. Sometimes it takes a while for the reports to get to us, and there could be a delay of 5 to 10 minutes, so make sure you differentiate when the event started versus when you send the report in to us. We can also accept information via a web form that can be found on our website at weather.gov/Des Moines. It includes information for all seasons, warm and cool season. You can report fog, flooding, hail size, high winds, tornadoes, wind damage, snow, freezing rain, and heavy rain. And the form will guide you on what information to report. With each report, be sure to include the information, the who, what, where, when, and what damage occurred. The who could be that you're a trained spotter or your spotter number. The what, report in as much detail what you're seeing as possible. If you're uncertain what you're seeing, certainly report that as well. We're not asking for exact perfection here. We're more looking for that you're providing the report to us and we can ask some questions to clarify. So we're looking, number one, for an open source of communication, and number two, the exact details. But the main thing is we want to talk to you and open that communication so we know what's going on. Be sure to include your nearest reference city. That could be a location versus a city as far as a distance. It could be a street address, an intersection, or a latitude, longitude if you have GPS. As I mentioned before, be sure to include the time of the event versus when it was transmitted or called into us. If you're woken up in the middle of the night due to high wind or large hail, you might watch the storm for a little bit and then decide that you need to report that to the National Weather Service. And so make sure that 10 or 15 or 5-minute delay is included in your report of when it started and when it ended versus when the report came into us. Be as descriptive as possible with your damage. Was the tree damage isolated? Did it occur across the entire town? Was the tree healthy or rotten? How big were the branches? How big was the largest branch? Was all the damage in one direction? Was there any house damage? Was the hail all the same size, or did it range from dime size up to golf balls, but mainly dimes? Anything of that nature, report it with as much detail as possible. Tornadoes are obviously something we want reported, but there are a few other things and some more details we need to take a look at. We would like to know about rotating wall clouds, funnel clouds, including how far down to the ground they are. For tornadoes, rotation is the key. Do we see rotation in the cloud? Is there any dust or debris below the funnel? If there is not, then it's likely still a funnel cloud rather than a tornado. How far away is the tornado? Estimate the distance and direction and the speed of motion. How big is the tornado? Is it a rope? Is it a wedge? Is it getting bigger or smaller or dissipating? That's very important when reporting. We certainly want to issue tornado warnings when tornadoes occur, and likewise, if the tornado threat has ended, we don't want to unnecessarily issue tornado warnings when we don't need to. If you have the information, any damage, injuries, or deaths would certainly be something we'd like to know about. For hail, report all hail regardless of the size. Try to measure the diameter of the hailstone using a ruler or a tape measure if possible. If you can't measure the hail directly, compare it to a common coin or ball size. One thing to remember, however, is do not report marble-sized hail. As you can see from the picture, there are many sizes of marbles. Some are above severe limits, some are below. Remember that severe hail is defined by an inch or a quarter sized or greater. So try to measure it exactly with a ruler or a tape measure rather than reporting by marbles. You can also go by coins, dimes, pennies, quarters, half dollars. Ping pong ball is finite, as is a golf ball. If it gets up to tennis ball size and baseball size, that's certainly a finite object we can compare it to. If it gets bigger than that, it's likely not symmetrical and probably should be measured at its widest distance using a ruler or tape measure. For damaging winds, try to estimate the strength or how strong the winds are. If you have a weather station, be sure to report the details from that. When we look at tree damage, we want to know the size of the trees snapped off, how widespread was the damage, are any trunks uprooted or snapped, was the tree old or rotten, was the damage to just a few branches or all across town, was there damage to buildings, was it due to wind directly, or was the damage to buildings because trees fell on them? How long did the winds last? 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or possibly less? What direction was the debris blown? Was it all blown in the same direction or many directions? So those are all things that we would like to have reported for wind damage. Provide as much detail as possible about the magnitude and the coverage and what exactly was damaged. Was it an old structure, a new structure, a healthy tree, or a rotten tree? For flash flooding, report what's being impacted. Is it a house? Is it a road? Is it extensive flooding in farm fields? Report the water depth, and was the water flowing? Was it flowing slowly or quickly? Was it 3 inches, 6 inches, 8 inches? So whether it's standing still or flowing is a key. And how often does it flood at this location? If it's very rare and you've never seen it before, that's something that may prompt a flash flood warning. Rather than something that is a more common occurrence that often occurs during heavy rains. If you happen to have a rain gauge, how much rain has fallen at your place during the storm and how quickly did it fall? An inch and a half that fell in 2 hours is less severe than an inch and a half that fell in 45 minutes. So if you have a way to provide that detail via rain gauge, that is certainly beneficial to our warning operations. So just remember, as I said before, communication is vital. No report is a bad report. We would rather have something that's a bit questionable and let us ask some questions rather than not report at all. We'd rather get the report 5 times rather than 0 times. So your report will certainly be used in warning operations, and it will be beneficial to your community, your neighbors. It will go out to law enforcement. It will go out to radio stations, television stations, on the internet. So your reports certainly make a difference, and it may save a life. Also remember not to base your reports based on what you may see on radar data on your phone or on your computer. We want a specific observation of what you're seeing. We already have the radar data at our disposal, but what we're looking for is what is occurring below the radar beam at the surface. So we want a detailed report of what's occurring at your particular location based on what you're seeing and what you're experiencing. If you can't remember all of this, don't worry. It's all available online at weather.gov/Des Moines. Click on the storm spotting link and there will be refreshers on how to submit your reports in all those different manners. In order to be a quality spotter, you need to have some information before the event occurs. One of those sources is the weather story, which is a graphical depiction of the weather available on our webpage at www.weather.gov/Des Moines. And this highlights the most significant weather for the next few days. The Storm Prediction Center in Norman, Oklahoma also issues severe weather outlooks out to 7 days in advance. That can be found on our webpage and also at www.spc.noaa.gov. Again, that is a national outlook issued by the Storm Prediction Center. The outlook is in a detailed 5-point scale, highlighting the risk of severe weather. The lowest is a marginal risk and the highest a high risk. So The scale goes from general thunderstorms with no severe weather expected up to the first step in the scale, marginal, then slight, then enhanced, moderate, and high. If you look at the details there, the marginal risk is limited in duration and coverage, as is the severity of the weather expected. And as we go from left to right, you can see the severity increase in terms of coverage, intensity, and longevity. And we get up into the enhanced and high category. We're talking towards the high category, a tornado outbreak, possibly a derecho. These are very long-lived, widespread, and particularly intense severe thunderstorms. Moderate and high outlooks are very rare and something you certainly should pay attention to when those have been issued. The next step in the process is to pay attention to severe weather watches. Instead of days in advance, these are issued hours in advance, generally 4 to 6 hours in lead time, and these are when conditions are favorable for the development of severe weather. The Storm Prediction Center coordinates with your local forecast office to issue tornado and severe thunderstorm watches, and flash flood watches are issued by your local National Weather Service office, including the one here in Des Moines. During a tornado watch, all forms of severe weather are possible. During a severe thunderstorm watch, it does not mean a tornado can't occur, but it means the damaging wind or hail are the more likely occurrence. For severe weather warnings, the time to take action is now. That means radar is either shown a high likelihood of severe weather occurring shortly, or a spotter, such as yourself, has reported severe weather, and we need to get that warning out as soon as possible. So warnings are issued for 60 minutes or less, and that means it's time to seek shelter right away. We used to issue warnings based on counties, but now, as you can see on the screen, we actually highlight a more detailed area called a storm-based warning or a warning polygon, where there is a specific highlighted threat for whatever the storm may be. It may be a tornado warning or a severe thunderstorm warning. So you can see in the examples, you'll want to have a graphical look at these warnings either on your smartphone or your computer to know exactly where the warning is in effect. We also include in tornado warnings and some severe thunderstorm warnings to try and highlight the severity of the damage. We put a tag at the bottom and also increase the wording in the warning. Most tornado warnings will not have one of these tags. However, you can see when we step up to the considerable damage threat or the catastrophic damage threat, the chances of widespread life-threatening damage are much higher. These are very rare. The National Weather Service in Des Moines has not issued a considerable or catastrophic tagged tornado warning since these impact-based warnings started. These would be reserved for the storms on the scale of Joplin or Parkersburg or Moore, Oklahoma. So these are very rare, may not actually occur in your lifetime, but certainly something to pay attention to if they occur. During severe thunderstorm warnings, we may also put a tag noting that there is a tornado possible. So this means that we don't have the confidence to issue a tornado warning as of yet, but it might be a good idea to treat this as a tornado warning and get into your house in the most interior part of the house as possible. All of this information can be found on the National Weather Service Des Moines website at weather.gov/Des Moines, where there's one-stop shopping for access to all the outlooks, watches, and warnings. You can submit spotter reports, view radar data, and these storm-based warning polygons that I've mentioned, and also a more traditional 7-day outlook. You can get satellite imagery, radar imagery, climatology, what the highs and lows have been, what the precipitation has been, as well as seeing all of your spotter reports. So it's a great one-stop shop and one source for all your weather information. Another great way to receive warning information is via NOAA Weather Radio, and that there's coverage for that over much of the state. These are radio transmitters operated 24/7 by various National Weather Service offices across the state. You do need a special receiver to receive these broadcasts, and you can program the radio to only go off for certain alerts or certain locations. You can also get a lot of this information from your traditional radio or television stations. Radio stations often interrupt their programming to broadcast watches and warnings. TV stations typically place a call at the bottom of the screen with watch warning and radar information, and will often interrupt programming with live coverage if the storm is heading toward a highly populated area or of a very high-end severity. Additional resources on spotter training can be found on our webpage at our online spotter resources page. This includes 2016 training in PDF format, which can be downloaded for your own use, 2016 course notes and registration information, reference cards, and field guides. Again, this can be found at www.weather.gov/dmx/storm spotting. Now we'll take a look at some safety information to keep in mind while spotting. Tornadoes are the worst case scenario that a spotter can encounter and form all different types of hazards. The main thing to remember is to maintain situational awareness at all times and avoid tunnel vision. This means if you do happen to be mobile or out in your car, have 4 ways to escape. The best place to spot is often an intersection, a paved intersection with escape routes in 4 different directions. You don't want a dirt or gravel road because those can become impassable due to flooding and water. So remember to always have an escape route. Seek sturdy shelter if you are in danger. Avoid night spotting, as it's hard to see anything and very dangerous, as we can see in this video. If your car is struck by even a weak tornado, your life is in danger.
We get hammered here. This thing can be really powerful. Wow.
Uh-oh, get down.
This is gonna hurt.
That's a strong tornado. Listen to the roar.
Wow, look at it on the...
Here is some additional nighttime tornado footage, and the thing to keep in mind is that tornadoes can form and dissipate very quickly, and this makes it even more dangerous at night when you can only see the storm illuminated by periodic lightning flashes. In this case, on and off, you can see the storm in the middle of the video, and it looks like a fairly sizable tornado as it moves across the countryside. However, you only get these infrequent snapshots, and you'll notice it's a fairly strong tornado. And then as we get toward the end here, you will see it dissipate fairly rapidly there. It weakens, and the next flash or two, you will not notice much in the way of a tornado at all. So that's what makes nighttime spotting and tornado spotting very hazardous. The storms can change quite quickly in just a short period of time. So remember that your vehicle is not a safe place during tornadoes, neither is an underpass. The wind actually funnels faster through the underpass. You also have no escape route if trapped by cars. So stay away from underpasses. Cars, trucks, and SUVs are not safe. As you'll see in the next video here, even a fairly weak tornado can flip cars around. So seek sturdy shelter if you are in a car or a vehicle. Lightning is a hazard with any thunderstorm, regardless of whether it's producing severe weather or a tornado, and lightning is by far the most common hazard facing spotters. You do not want to be the highest object around, so be careful on ridgetops and open areas. Stay in your vehicle if mobile, and remember, if you hear thunder, you are at risk. Also remember, the reason cars are safe is not because of the rubber in the tires. The lightning's traveled through several, probably tens of thousands of feet of the atmosphere in the air to get to the ground, so a few inches of rubber is not going to stop anything. What makes cars safe is the fact that they act like a Faraday cage, and the lightning is channeled around you through the frame of the car or the vehicle into the ground. So if you are caught in a severe lightning storm in your car or vehicle, keep your hands to yourself. That means don't grab the frame in any fashion. Don't touch the radio. Don't touch the wipers or the steering wheel. Put your hands in your lap and ride the storm out. Strong winds are often a hazard during severe thunderstorms as well. They can occur with squall lines, but can occur with any type of storm. The stronger winds are often on the storm's leading edge. However, they can travel far from the actual storm. As with lightning, do not seek shelter under trees or small structures that might collapse. As you can see in this video, the winds can occur quite quickly and strengthen very quickly. You'll see in the video a formation called a rainfoot that is approaching, so we can pick this out visually in the distance as it approaches. And we'll even hear the strong winds picking up really quickly as the storm nears. So listen closely to the damage and the sound of the wind. And keep in mind, these are straight line winds, not tornadic, blowing from right to left. A great example of the damage potential of straight-line winds. Hail can also be a very significant hazard and danger with severe thunderstorms. Hail can fall at speeds of 50 upwards to 100 miles per hour, and even small hail can cause damage and injury. Take shelter in a walled structure and definitely stay away from windows, as we'll see in this video. Wind-driven hail can enter your home through windows, so you want to be in an interior room and away from those windows.
Get away from the windows. Ain't nothing to do, babe.
A great example of the hazards of hail during severe thunderstorms. Flash flooding can also be a big hazard and is in fact the #1 severe weather-related killer in the United States. The heavy rainfall combined with saturated soils often results in runoff with standing or flowing water through fields and oftentimes on roads, and can build up to quite a depth. So the impacts are amplified by terrain, meaning hills or slopes, and also poor drainage into cities. Remember, turn around, don't drown. Stay away from barricaded roads and never drive through standing or flowing water. And we'll see a representation of that in this video as the car drives down the road. You'll actually see a police officer on the right here, and then the car is fairly quickly after that inundated by standing water and no longer drivable, and quickly becomes a hazard to this person's life. So remember, spotter safety is our #1 concern. We're never asking you to chase. We're never asking you to put yourself in any danger. The first thing you should do if you sense any danger is to reach a place of safety, the interior part of your house, the lowest, most interior part, which ideally would be your basement. So remember to keep an eye on the sky, prepare for all hazards, even during relatively benign thunderstorms, which would include lightning, wind, and hail, and then certainly for the more severe ones. Keep an eye out for flooding and lightning. Drive smart and safely and use common sense. Also remember, the National Weather Service does not officially deploy spotters. Spotting is done at one's own risk. Now let's take a look back at Iowa's severe weather for 2015. It started out fairly quietly with a late finish and actually some heavy rain into December. We had multiple rare tornadoes in October, November, and December. Late season flooding into December, as I mentioned, and that turned out to be the 8th wettest year on record in Des Moines. For 2015, the state of Iowa had 58 tornadoes with 5 injuries and thankfully 0 deaths. Some notable events include May 10th, when an EF1 tornado hit a school in Lake City with many homes damaged. Into June on the 22nd, there was an EF3, the strongest of the year, southeast of Columbia, and an EF2 near Albia. Tornadoes continued even into the fall, including Veterans Day November 11th, when EF1 damage occurred at a Walmart in Knoxville, where other homes were also damaged. There was significant wind and hail in 2015 as well, including a freight train blown off the tracks in southern Iowa May 17th. Giant hail occurred June 20th over southeast Iowa, near Harvey, Iowa, reaching 3.5 inches in diameter. And also straight-line winds across northern Iowa damaged a church in Radcliffe during the late evening hours. 2015 flooding was severe in some instances too. We had above-average rainfall over the entire state, including June flooding through central Iowa along the Raccoon River into Des Moines, and late summer and winter flooding again, accumulating in the wettest December ever. Some of the photos here note flooding that occurred in Dayton in late August and near Carlisle in late July. After reviewing tornadoes from 2015, we'll take a look at what typically occurs during an Iowa tornado season, or Iowa tornado climatology. The averages from 1980 to 2015 include an average of 48 tornadoes per year, and you can see the activity peaks in May and June. That is because tornadoes need 2 things to occur. They need wind shear and they need instability. And as the sun begins to heat things up from spring into summer, that's when the tornado development increases. And we also need that wind shear, and that's often when the jet stream is fairly close to us. And when we have that changeable weather, that often occurs as we transition from spring into summer. So that's why the tornado activity peaks as we go from May into June. Every month has seen a tornado, however, so it's not unprecedented at any time of the year. Most tornadoes occur between 1 and 8 p.m., as you can see in the graph, and that's because the tornadoes depend on that instability, and it has to be surface-based instability for the tornado to occur. There is a minimum at night due to that weakness. However, they can occur at any time of day. Some tornado events do occur at night because the wind shear does increase at night due to a feature called the low-level jet. Looking at Iowa's hail and wind climatology, you can see the peak months are somewhat similar to tornadoes, but are pushed a little bit later in the season, with peaks in June into July. This is because hail and wind events are still very much dependent on the amount of heating or warmth in the atmosphere, so it's dependent on the peak heating of the sun during the summer months. However, they're less dependent on the amount of shear, and you can see the shear does weaken a little bit, as you'd expect as we get into the dog days of summer and the jet stream departs to the north. Looking at the time of day, we can see again a peak in the afternoon hours because of that solar maximum when it's the warmest time of the day, and that creates the most instability. You can also see, though, a secondary maximum during the early morning hours from about 11 p.m. to 3 a.m., including the midnight hour, and that's because of a feature called the low-level jet, which helps focus southerly winds into Iowa. It does increase wind shear somewhat in the lower levels of the atmosphere, but the primary function of that is it pushes warm, moist air northward. It increases convergence and helps drive thunderstorms that are already occurring and sometimes initiate new ones that haven't developed yet. So that concludes part 1. We covered in this video an introduction to storm spotting, being a storm spotter, how to report, different aspects of reporting, spotter safety, a look back at 2015, Iowa's weather in review, and a look at Iowa's severe weather climatology, or the peak times of when severe weather events occur. In part 2, included in a separate video, which I encourage you to go through, that will look at some more details of how severe weather occurs, including thunderstorm fundamentals, updrafts and downdrafts, tornadoes, and a quiz to review everything you've learned. Thank you for watching. Have a safe year, and we really encourage you to report severe weather, damage of any nature to the National Weather Service. You are our eyes to the sky and what's occurring on the ground, and we really can't do a quality severe weather operation without you. Thank you again.